All right, diving in today. Exodus chapter 25. We're going to unpack this whole tabernacle thing, all the furniture and stuff.
They get into the details.
Yeah, and not just like what it all was, like some ancient IKEA instructions, but the why. All that symbolism, what it tells us about God and the Israelites, their relationship.
It's a really fascinating glimpse into the core of their faith, how they wanted to create a dwelling place for God right there in the middle of the desert.
Right, out in the wilderness. Okay, so to start, something that really jumped out at me was how they got all the materials together. It was all donated, not like God demanded it, right?
That's so important to remember. It wasn't a tax or anything. It was the people just pouring out their hearts, wanting to make this place for God to be present. They gave their best stuff, too.
Yeah, and that makes you think, have you ever noticed how much more connected you feel to something when you chose to be a part of it?
Oh, absolutely. Like a community project or even a gift you put real effort into. When it's voluntary, there's this sense of ownership and pride.
Totally. And here, the Israelites were giving up gold, silver, the good fabrics, all to build this place for God.
Right, their most valuable possessions.
Which kind of sets the stage for how important this whole thing is to them. It's not just a building. It's a statement about how devoted they were.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the centerpiece, the star of the show, the Ark of the Testimony.
Yeah, the Ark. Now, that's more than just a box. That was a symbol, a powerful one, of God being right there with them.
Right. And one thing that I thought was interesting was they use feet when they're describing it instead of cubits.
Oh.
Like three-quarter feet long, 2¼ feet wide and high. It's almost like we can picture it in our own homes,
That's an interesting point, isn't it? Switching the units like that makes the Ark feel closer somehow, more relatable to everyday life, even though it's holding something so awe-inspiring.
Yeah, God's presence wasn't some far-off abstract idea. It was right there in this thing they could understand the size of. And speaking of that, what about the materials? Acacia wood, but then covered in gold? What's the deal with that combo?
Yeah, the materials, that choice is super deliberate. So acacia wood, that's desert wood, tough stuff, represents the human side, our earthly nature.
Okay.
Strong, but it can rot, like we're mortal.
Right, so the wood is us with all our limitations.
Exactly. But then it's completely covered in gold. And gold, well, that's purity, the divine, something that lasts. Doesn't tarnish, doesn't decay.
Ah, I see where you're going. So by covering the wood in gold, it's like they're taking the human and making it more, merging it with the divine.
You got it. The Ark becomes this symbol of the place where human and divine meet. And then on top of the Ark is the mercy seat, the lid. That's where God's presence was specifically, where he spoke to Moses.
So it's not just a lid. It's like a point of contact, right, between heaven and earth.
Exactly. It embodies that whole idea of God being transcendent, like beyond our full understanding outside of time and space. But also immanent, present with his people, accessible through the mercy seat.
Okay, so we got this incredible symbolic ark holding God's presence. Now, what else is in this divine dwelling? Well, a table, but of course, no ordinary table.
Oh, no. This table is acacia wood, 3 feet long, 18 inches wide and high, and of course, just like the Ark, it's covered in gold, the whole thing.
Wow, the whole thing.
Even a molding around the edge, even the racks they put the bread on, it's all gold.
Everything about it just screams special, Like, they were so meticulous, they really wanted it to be worthy of its purpose. But why a table? Why bread? Seems kind of, I don't know, everyday compared to the Ark.
And that's where the symbolism gets even deeper. Bread, at its core, is sustenance. It's provision, the basic stuff of life. And by putting this table full of bread constantly in front of God, they were acknowledging where it all came from.
Like a constant reminder, everything we have is from you.
Exactly. A statement of dependence and gratitude. Even out in the desert, they knew God was taking care of them, down to their daily bread.
So the table, seemingly simple, but actually a really powerful message about God providing and the Israelites depending on him for it all. Okay, but there's more to this tabernacle. Got to have some light, right? The menorah. And this wasn't just any lamp, was it?
Oh, no. Prepare to be amazed. This was made from one lump of hammered gold.
Whoa, wait a minute. Even with all our technology now, doing that would be ridiculously hard, if not impossible. What does that say about their skill?
It speaks to a level of craftsmanship that's almost beyond us. Imagine the dedication, the precision, the artistry to take a solid piece of gold and turn it into something so intricate and beautiful. It shows just how devoted the Israelites were, how much they wanted to create something truly extraordinary for God.
So it's like maybe there was some divine inspiration guiding their hands too.
And the light from the menorah, it wasn't just about lighting up the inside of the tabernacle. It was meant to be seen from outside, too, beyond the tent walls. A beacon symbolizing God's light reaching out into the world, fighting back the darkness.
So it's not just about physical light, it's about God's presence reaching out to everyone.
Right. The menorah becomes a representation of God's light, his presence, not limited by any physical structure. It's a reminder that his reach is limitless. His love and grace extend out to all.
That idea of the menorah's light going beyond the tabernacle, it kind of reminds me of something we see over and over in Exodus 25, this whole idea that Moses saw a pattern on the mountain, like a blueprint for everything. This wasn't just some DIY project. They were copying something heavenly, a divine design.
Absolutely. They weren't just making a building. They were recreating a heavenly model, getting a glimpse of the divine realm. And that raises a fascinating question. What does that say about the nature of the tabernacle, of worship itself?
Yeah, it makes you think, what does it mean to replicate a heavenly pattern down here on earth?
Well, I kind of suggest that true worship, it's not just about a building or some rituals. It's about lining ourselves up with that heavenly pattern, trying to reflect God's kingdom in our lives.
So it's like taking those blueprints from heaven and saying, okay, let's build a little bit of heaven down here.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just the building itself, but the heart behind it. Remember, the Israelites were pouring their devotion, their artistry, their best stuff into making this place worthy of God.
It's wild, right? Like our source even points out that even with all our fancy technology today, we couldn't replicate that menorah exactly. They didn't describe how it was made. It was just hammered from a single lump of gold.
Yeah, it really shows the limits of what we humans can grasp, We can try to copy the outward forms, but that true essence, that divine spark, we can't recreate that on our own.
Adds a whole layer of mystery, doesn't it? Like the supernatural is woven right into the tabernacle.
For sure. Reminds us there's always more to discover about God, how he works. We can study the blueprints, look at all the details, but there's always going to be that element of mystery that calls for humility and awe.
Maybe it's less about perfectly copying the physical stuff and more about cultivating that awe, that desire for God's presence in our lives.
I like that. Because really, the tabernacle was meant to be a portable house for God, a way for the Israelites to take that sense of the divine with them everywhere.
Which then kind of begs the question, how do we do that today? Make space for God in our own lives. What's our version of gold and acacia wood? What are we offering to create that dwelling place for God within ourselves?
Big question, right? And I think it's a very personal one. What are the things we treasure most? Our talents, our time, our resources. What are we willing to give to grow closer to God?
It's not about building a physical structure. It's about an inner sanctuary. Finding that heavenly pattern and letting it shape like our thoughts, our actions, everything.
Exactly. And that pattern, it's not just in old texts, it's all around us, in nature.
Yeah.
In the love we share, in those moments of grace that pop up in the ordinary.
Seeing the sacred in everyday life, the spark of the divine in ourselves and others. Maybe that's how we start building a little bit of heaven down here.
Yeah, it's powerful, isn't it? Thinking we can each be a dwelling place for God, it changes the whole idea of church, doesn't it? It's not just a building anymore.
It becomes about how we actually live, right?
Yeah.
The choices we make, the love we show. It's like embodying those principles from the tabernacle, that reverence, the dedication, offering our best to God.
And it's a good reminder, too, that God isn't stuck in one place or time. His presence is available to us anytime if we're open to it.
Yeah, just like the light from that menorah going beyond any walls, God's grace, it lights up the whole world with love and compassion. So wrapping up our Exodus 25 deep dive here, I gotta say, I'm feeling a sense of awe, but also possibility. We didn't just go through a list of tabernacle furniture. We found a deeper meaning, the sacredness of what they used, all the symbolism, and that amazing concept of recreating a heavenly pattern down here.
And hopefully it's got us thinking about how we make that space for God in our own lives. What's sacred to us? What's our gold and acacia wood? The things we offer up to build that relationship with God.
Great question to keep thinking about. If that tabernacle was a portable home for God's presence, how do we turn our own lives into a dwelling place for him?
Keep exploring Exodus 25, see what other interpretations you find, and most importantly, think about what really stuck with you from our deep dive today.
Thanks for joining us on this journey through Exodus 25. Let us know what you think. Until next time.